أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدًا عبده ورسوله أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Respected Sadr Sahib, respected Nazir of Ijtema, and all the brother Ansar and Khudam, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It is indeed a great pleasure for me once again to inaugurate the Ansarullah Ijtema. By the grace of Allah, Majlid Ansarullah UK has a very rich history. And it has very humble beginnings in the UK. And I remember when I was a very young man in this country, our elders at that stage, by the grace of Allah, used to be very active. And at that stage, we were a very small Jamaat, just a handful of families used to live in the UK. And all the activities of the Jamaat used to take place around Fazl Mosque. At that stage, we did not have the Mahmood Hall or Nusrat Hall. It was just the mosque and two houses, 61 and 63 Melrose Road. And there, everything used to take place. And sometimes when we had events, they used to be in the gardens of Melrose Road. And then I remember when Hazrat Khalifah Masih Rabi Rahimullah came to this country, we saw a complete transformation of the whole Jamaat. And even at that stage, the first Jalsa Salana that took place in Mahmood Hall. You cannot even imagine, but that gives you a sense of the Janeed of the Jamaat, that our first Jalsa Salana after Khalifah Masih Rabi Rahimullah arrived in the UK in 1984 took place in Mahmood Hall, where we probably had, for the first 2 days, between 300 to 400 attendees. And then the final session took place in Tolworth Recreational Center, where probably had 1,500 men and 1,500 women. And then the following year, we acquired, by the grace of Allah, Islamabad, and the first Jalsa Salana took place in Islamabad, where first year we had approximately 4,000 to 4,500 attendees, and some of them came from Europe and Pakistan. And at that stage, the accommodation and the marquees for Jalsa were much smaller than the marquee that we are sitting in today. And we did not have those facilities that we, by the grace of Allah, enjoy today, where you have air conditioning, you have wooden floors, carpets. And at that stage, I remember in 1985, it rained so heavily that we used to have straw and carpet on top. All the water came into the marquees. And everyone sitting on the floor, their clothes got wet, and the cars got stuck. So from those humble beginnings, we have seen the UK Jamaat transform into this, by the grace of Allah, this large Jamaat, where even the auxiliary organizations, by the grace of Allah, are able to organize events which are much larger than the events that we were holding in the initial stages for the Jamaat. And I remember some of the Ijtemas that took place, both of Qudam Lemdi and Ansarullah. The first Ijtema, as far as I remember, it could have been a joint Ijtema in the late 1960s, took place on Wimbledon Common. And there, it was just near the windmill, for those people who know where that is, near the windmill. And Hazrat Chaudhry Zafrullah Khan Sahib came and officiated at that Ijtema. And all we had was a few races and a few number of competitions, and that was the total extent. But then slowly and slowly, as the Jamaat grew, by the grace of Allah, we were able to hold Ijtemas. And I remember Heathland College, Heathland School in Ansarullah is sometimes where Ijtemas also were held. And then eventually, when Huzur Aqdas came, we started. However, as the Jamaat has grown, some of the issues, because when it was a smaller Jamaat, it was easy to nurture and do the tarbiyat of our youngsters, because it was much smaller and everyone took responsibility and everyone considered children therefore as their own children, and therefore took great responsibility to nurture all the young children in the Jamaat. And I remember when we first came to this country, we did not have a formal Itfalullah organization, so at that stage, Bashir Khan Sahib used to be the Emir and Laik Tahir Sahib used to be the Naib Emir, and that was when they first created Majlis Itfalullah Ahmadiyya. So we can see how by the grace of Allah, things have progressed since then, and especially under Khilafat, we have seen how the progress of the Jamaat has completely transformed the Jamaat in the UK. And of course, in other parts of Europe as well, but we in particular in the UK have this special blessing of Allah, the Khalifatul Masih amongst us. And I was talking about this on the route to our Ijtema, that constant guidance of Huzur Aqdas here, even small things, we are able to get guidance from Huzur immediately, which other Jamaats are not able to get. But in spite of all of that, we also have challenges. And Allah says in Surah Luqman, chapter 31, verse 18 to 20, "O my dear son, observe prayer, enjoin in good and forbid evil, and endure patiently whatever may befall thee. Surely this is of those matters which require high resolve." So what is it that Allah the Almighty requires of us? Allah requires piety, honesty, modesty, generosity, graciousness, merciful. And Allah requires us to be a good son, a good father, a good husband, a good brother, and a good human being. These attributes taught in the home by the parents from a very early age can result in our children growing up as caring, loving, pious, honest, and modest individuals. And Islam teaches us that from day one, we do the azan in the ear of our child when the child is born, and the whole purpose is that that is when the tarbiyat of the child actually starts. Some parents are of the opinion that no, let the children grow up, and when they grow up, then we will be able to take care of them and do their tarbiyat. But tarbiyat has to start from day one, and it has to start in the home. It cannot be the mosque or the Jamaat or any other organization that will do the tarbiyat of the children. It has to be in the home. But in order for us to undertake that tarbiyat, we have to set the example of piety, generosity, merciful, and all of those qualities in our own character. If we are not able to set that example personally, then we will not be able to teach our children anything at all. Now the thing is that in Pakistan or Muslim countries, children have the advantage that from a very early age, even in schools, although I know at this moment in Pakistan, we as a Jamaat, we have issues and we have problems, but even then, we are growing up in in an environment where children grow up in an Islamic environment. And they will pick up things from a very early age, whether it is school, whether it is at home, whether it is in the general public. But in this country, where there are a lot of very good qualities, and let me say that this country, in some ways, practices Islam more than some of the Muslim countries do. Because in this country, some of the qualities that we were talking about, honesty, modesty, generosity, graciousness, politeness, giving alms, looking after the sick, looking after the poor, these fundamental qualities are ingrained in this society. But the problem that this society does have is that it is growing further and further away from Allah the Almighty. And because of that, it is turning into be a more selfish society. Everyone is looking at themselves first. And unfortunately, in the West, we're getting leaders like Mr. Trump who are reinforcing that message, saying America first. And that means, again, it is a more selfish attitude that has been propagated there. So in these countries, we have to take even greater care that we look after our children and protect them from some of those issues that are driving people away from God the Almighty in our society. So the first thing we must do is, and if you look at how your parents brought you up, because they were the ones who sacrificed, they were the ones, in a lot of cases, it was parents and grandparents who accepted Ahmadiyyat and sacrificed everything for Ahmadiyyat. And they were the ones who were able to then fight against the ills in the society by themselves, but create an environment at home which was of piety, integrity, and honesty. Now, each and every one of us has to look at ourselves and say, is that what we are providing in our home? I have said many times that when I come to the mosque, I can tell by just looking at the children which come from a house in which they are receiving excellent training. Because if you are being given the right training at home, you will see a 1-year-old child will come and stand next to their parents and perform the actions of namaz just as if an elder was doing it. And then you find those children who are 10, 11, 12, 13 years old, who are running around and sometimes ruining the prayers of other people who want to say their prayers. So when you practice piety and integrity and honesty in your own home, and you supplicate to Allah 5 times a day in your own home, or you take your children with you, and I have given my father's example many times, how he did our training, then you will be able to bring up your children with those qualities that are a must for any Ahmadi child, male or female. Now, there are a lot of challenges in society we are finding nowadays. And Surya Akhtar constantly has reminded us of our responsibilities. And Azur says, that it is the Ahmadi Muslim youth who will be the means of leading others towards success and true freedom. To do this, you must learn about your faith so that you can display the highest moral standards in all aspects of your life. Only when you strive for such high standards will you be able to paint the true picture of peaceful Islam for the people of this world. If you are able to improve and reform yourself, it will not only benefit you, but it will also be a means of serving your nation and society in which you live. So, how do we achieve this? I think the first thing, we are living in a society where there's a lot of Islamophobia, and children sometimes are embarrassed to call themselves Muslims. And unless you know your faith inside out, and you have your connection with Allah the Almighty, and you have the love of Allah the Almighty in your heart, you will not have that character that you can go up and hold your head high in society and defend your faith. Not only are we fighting the society, but also we are fighting the Muslims in this country who are also pointing fingers at us as being kafir and murtad. In my daughter's school, there were two little girls. One was an Ahmadi girl, 7 or 8 years old, and one was from one of the other Sunni Muslims. And they were best of friends. Until one day, the other girl came and said, "My mother has said that I cannot be friends with you because you're not a Muslim." Can you imagine the impact that may have had on that young child and child's mind, that not only are they fighting Islamophobia, but they're also fighting this issue of other Muslims calling us non-Muslims. It is huge pressure for our children. And I was speaking to somebody, because recently in Pakistan, now this social media has become very active, and every day you receive different messages, and I'm sure some of you receive all these messages as well. There was a Maulvi who was saying that, Ahmadis, because they blaspheme, he was working out that when they read the kalma, they don't mean, because they're saying that in our writings of the Prophet Islam and Hazrat Khalifa Sani, Rahimullah, they said that Ahmad and Muhammad are the same. Now that is correct. But what they are implying here is that the Ahmad, Mirza Ghulam Ahmad, is the second Muhammad. And therefore the kalma that they're reading, La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah, they actually mean Ahmad and not Muhammad. And because that is what they say, then everything else they say is blasphemous, and they're liable to be killed. Now this is the situation that in Pakistan our children are finding on a daily basis. They're finding this prejudice. And Hazur Aqdas has said many times that we are the fortunate ones here that have been able to come out of that environment and are able to practice our faith freely, and yet we are not fulfilling our responsibilities to Allah the Almighty. And we are not able to bring our children in this open environment as good Ahmadi Muslims, and yet in Pakistan, where there's all the opposition, our children are still growing up into good Ahmadis in that country. So here are our challenges. Unless we create that environment in our home, unless we have honesty and piety and integrity in our homes, unless we have honest living and honest earning in our homes, unless we behave towards each other in a proper manner, we will be giving the wrong signal to our children. Unfortunately, a lot of cases come to me where parents, because of their own issues, they become so contentious that they take them out on children. I have a number of cases I'm dealing with at the moment where parents living in the same house are destroying the lives of their children because they are in conflict, and they expect the children to still be loyal and still love them in the same way, and yet when they're tearing them apart. Now, a mother who is looking after the children and feeding them and looking after them will naturally have more affection in the children's hearts than the father. And then what happens is that the father accuses the children of not looking after them and not paying proper respect to them when they themselves are not prepared to pay any respect to the children themselves. And unless we move away from these things, and then if we use bad language, if we do bad behavior, if children see us sitting at home all day not doing anything, then what type of example are we creating for our children? So I think this is something that we have to take very, very seriously, and we should look at how we can improve our own environment at home for the sake of our children. Now, there's another big challenge that we are facing at this moment in time. And Allah says, Allah the Almighty says in the Holy Quran, "Verily, we sent our messengers with manifest signs and sent down with them the book and the balance that people may act with justice. And we send down iron, wherein is material for violent warfare, and many benefit from mankind, and that Allah may distinguish those who help him and his messenger without having seen him. Surely Allah is powerful and almighty." Now this verse relates to the development of modern day technology. Of course, it mentions warfare, and we know that the modern technology is leading us towards destruction. Every day we hear about nuclear weapons, and we hear about warfare. And Hazur Aqdas has warned the Jamaat many times, and also at peace conferences, Hazur has mentioned many times to the politicians of the world that unless we change ourselves, we are walking straight into a nuclear disaster, and nobody will be able to save us unless we live in a just world. And unfortunately, we see more and more injustice taking place in the world. We've seen in the United Nations what they're doing, even at this moment in time. And unless the world moves, as in our home, unless we can have a piety and honesty and integrity, the same applies on the international scene. Unless they can have honesty, piety, and integrity, they will also move towards disaster, as we will in our homes if we don't go in that direction. Now, we use technology and depend on technology in our daily lives. And our needs and demands for technology keep rising. Human beings use technology to travel, to communicate, to learn, to do business, to live in comfort. International communications that would span periods of weeks, we can now complete in a matter of seconds. And by the internet and other modern communications of technology, we are able to reach out around the world. Companies like Amazon make it so easy to access anything and everything from across the world and have it delivered right to your doorsteps immediately. I'm sure that parents are experiencing at home, especially the younger children nowadays, go onto Amazon and order, and within 24 hours, things are delivered, and everything is now coming through Amazon. However, technology also causes concerns for us. Its poor application has resulted in the pollution of environment, and it also caused a serious threat to our lives and society. Hazur Aqdas ibn Aziz has warned us about the dangers of modern technology throughout his speeches in the UK, German, and Belgium Jalsa Salanas. who constantly emphasize the dangers of modern technology, especially when it comes to the younger generation. During his Lajna session address in the UK Jalsa Salana this year, Huzur spoke openly about this issue, and he said that many are now so consumed by their phones, so much so that it has now become an addiction, and much like addicts, people are constantly glued to their phones, and in doing so, further feed this addiction. Because of this, basic home life is falling apart, children are being spoiled, and when mothers call them down for dinner, firstly, the children do not listen, and when they do come down, they're holding with them phones or some technology where they're playing games or watching films, and they are constantly watching something on a screen. Some children do not focus on their education, so mothers have become worrisome. Now, this technology was there to help us. It has a lot of positives, but be very careful because there are a huge number of dangers in this technology. And those people who are inventing this technology and developing it, let me tell you what they think. Well, Facebook creator Mark Zuckerberg has openly stated that he will not let his daughter open a Facebook account until at least she is 13 years old. And after the birth of his second daughter, August, Facebook founder and father of two, Mark Zuckerberg, posted an open letter to his newborn child, urging her to make time to go and play outside. And he says, "You will be busy when you're older, so I hope that you will take time to smell the flowers and will put leaves that you want into your own bucket." And he's wrote to his wife, Priscilla Chan, that they should exercise this discipline in their home. Similarly, the excessive use of technology is something that even the giants are aware of. In 2007, Bill Gates, the former CEO of Microsoft, implemented a cap on the screen time when his daughter started developing an unhealthy attachment to video games. He also didn't let his children get cell phones until they turned 14. And today, the average age of a child getting their first iPhone is 10. Steve Jobs, who was the CEO of Apple until his death in 2012, revealed in a 2011 New York Times interview that he prohibited his kids from using the newly released iPad. We limit how much technology our children use at home. So you can see the three major developers of modern technology are prohibiting their own children from using it. And yet, they are encouraging everybody else to make more and more use of it. And our children are becoming addicted to this. In their book, Screen Schooled, educators Joe Clement and Matt Miles mention what is it these wealthy tech executives know about their own products that the consumer doesn't. The authors wrote, "The answer, according to a growing body of evidence, is the addictive power of digital technology." And Huzur has mentioned this in his khutbah at Jalsa Salana. The constant reliance on modern technology is having a major impact on people's general social skills. An article in the Huffington Post raised this issue and presented the question, can children these days handle spontaneous social interaction? Now, I'm sure that you will see in your own homes those children who are spending a lot of time on, and it is said that if you're spending more than 6 hours in front of a screen, then you're addicted. It doesn't matter whether you're a child, whether you're an adult, whoever, if you're spending 6 hours a day on front of a screen, you're an addict. And you will see in your own homes, look at your own homes. Is that happening? Are your children constantly going from one screen to another? Whether it's going from TV to a laptop to an iPhone? Collectively, see how much time they're spending on it. And the damage that this is doing to their health is innumerable. Because what it is doing is that the emotional energy that they have is being consumed by this technology. So they're becoming emotionally bankrupt. And you will see that when you try and take them, and this was who was mentioning, even when they're called down for dinner, they bring their iPhones with them. But you will see that if you try and interfere, you will find there is a very sharp reaction. They will be upset when they've been asked to come off those iPhones or screens. Because they go so much into it that it is having a change in their brain that is affecting the way they think. And as a result of this, what is happening is that although computers were brought in to assist us, but it is taking away some of our emotions away from us. And to the degree that our children are, as it mentions in that research, that they are lacking social skills. They can't talk to each other. I am getting reports even of Ahmadi children, married, who sit in the same room and they will communicate with each other through texting each other, not speaking to each other. So this technology is doing permanent damage that even we don't know yet. And at the moment, there is not enough research how much other damage it is doing to our health. And the fact that children want to stay indoors and play these games, and nowadays more and more companies are encouraging them, and parents are giving them money so that they can go and buy more games, more storage, more whatever, and they are, without the parents' knowledge, they are doing more and more damage to their own health. Now, there is a lot of research. Last year, a British neuroscientist warned that the internet may be rewiring our brains and leading to attention deficit. Attention deficit hyperactivity disorder is also known as Rohn's list of concern, in addition to the possibility that children are growing up more detached from people, as I mentioned earlier. As children, parents are attached more and more to technology, they are detaching from each other. And we know as a species we need to connect. And he said we really pack animals and we need to connect with other human beings. That's just a fact for any living organism. It doesn't do well when it's on its own. So the danger here is that unless we manage this technology, it is going to hurt us both in terms of our emotions, our interaction, our social skills, and our children will lose their social skills and they will not be able to interact with each other, which will cause some of the issues and problems that we're finding now. And that is then being translated in their homes. We're finding that in the homes, because of lack of communication, marriages break up. In Germany, the children came out in protest recently against their parents spending too much time on technology. There was a huge march past in one of the towns there, protesting that their parents were spending too much time on their screens and not paying attention to them. And in our homes, we have to look. Everyone is on WhatsApp nowadays, and there's all this media explosion. Everyone loves, and you see people sitting in restaurants, and you see people sitting even in the mosque sometime, watching their screens. I refuse my children to have anything on the dinner table. They're restricted the amount of time they can spend on it. And you have to watch that in their bedrooms, when they go into the bedrooms, they don't take these screens with them. Because in the middle of the night, they could be watching. And also, the other thing that is happening is that some of the people are nurturing and bullying these children without the knowledge of the parents. And sometimes the children can do stupid things which will, for the rest of their lives, will harm them. So I think this is something that we have to watch very carefully. In 2012, in fact, scientists in the Chinese Academy of Science found that the brain chemicals of people who habitually use internet and were perhaps addicted to it have abnormal connections between the nerve fibers in their brain. These changes are similar to those to other sorts of addicts, including alcohol. So there is actually a physical disformity in your brain when you're addicted to this. In China, they say that there were 24 million children who become addicts to this technology. And in order to deal with this, they have had to send children into the army to try and reform them back into normal human beings. So I think we as a Jamaat, we have to be very careful, because our children are being exposed to the same media. Our children are being exposed to the same level of damage that is happening to other children. And not only children, also the parents, they are being exposed. And as I mentioned, as yet we do not know, we haven't got enough research as to what the long-term damage is. But I'll read you one report that recently has been published. In CMH Sialkot 9 patients of eye, brain, and cancer have been received in the last 2 months. A seminar was held in CMH Lahore in this regard. According to the investigation, 64% increase in cancer patients has been noted. The reason is excessive use of mobile phones and laptops. Youngsters and kids are main affectees. It starts from cervical spine pain, then headache and faintness. Later affects the eyes, brain, and skin. So avoid excessive use of mobiles, especially WhatsApp, during night and early morning. Children should be advised to use mobiles only for calls. Rest all the apps be avoided. Whilst using laptop, neck position be kept straight and screen to be used. It is important that we disseminate this information to everyone so that people are aware of it. This is what the article says. So you can see that technology can have good uses, but the dangers are also there for everyone to see. During his address at the York University in Toronto on 26th of October 2016, Hazur Akhtar says, such technology has been developed that has the capability of wiping nations off the map with the press of a button. Of course, I'm referring to the development of weapons of mass destruction that are capable of inflicting the most unimaginable horrors, devastation, and destruction. Such weapons are being produced that have the potential to destroy not only civilization today, but also leave behind a legacy of misery for generations to come. In the world today, we witness double standards and hypocrisy at so many levels of society that the resulting lack of peace is the cause of the utmost concern and grief for those people who sincerely feel the pain of humanity. As a leader of the world Muslim community, it is this issue that concerns and worries me more than any other. And then Hazur went on to say, at a time when certain groups within Islam are doing their utmost to defame and discredit his teaching, we are witnessing how Allah the Almighty is constantly opening new venues of tabligh for our Jamaat. Unquestionably, MTA is itself playing a great role in spreading the true teachings of Islam to all parts of the world. I hope and pray that we are able to take full benefit of this great treasure that Allah has bestowed upon us so that the message of true Islam shines brightly and comes to enlighten every home in the world. And then Huzur further says, there's no doubt that the media plays a huge role in influencing public opinion. So the media should use this power responsibly as a force for good and a force for peace. It should show the world that true Islam represents rather than focusing on merciless acts of tiny minority. So we can use media responsibly as well and for propagation of Islam, but it has a lot of dangers, and we should be very careful that as parents, as fathers, as brothers, as grandparents, we particularly look at and make sure that we do not allow in our own homes for this to be misused. Finally, I would like to say that by the grace of Allah, we are blessed with the institution of Khilafat. Hazrat Amir al-Mu'mineen, on a daily basis, is trying to teach us what true Islam stands for and how we can develop our relationship with our Creator. And he continuously tells us that the best way to do that is through supplication to Allah the Almighty. And he continuously reminds all of us, particularly office bearers, that congregational prayers is the most important way we can develop that relationship with Allah the Almighty. So my message is that we should make sure that in our homes we constantly listen to Huzur's Friday sermons and act upon every word of advice that he gives us. Because his primary purpose is to lead us towards piety, to lead us towards honesty, to lead us towards integrity, and have pious lives that when we go to Allah the Almighty, we can say that, yes, we tried our best to be good human beings when we were on this earth. Finally, I'd request special prayers. Allah has blessed us with the institution of Khilafat. Therefore, it makes it incumbent upon us that we should pray for the good health, long life of Hazrat Amir al-Mu'mineen and his family. May Allah continue to bless us with this institution so we receive Allah's blessing through this great institution. May Allah bless you all. Will you please join me in silent prayer? Ameen.